Welcome back to Henry Harrison's Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance podcast, featuring Jeremiah Conger, founder and chief executive officer of Annuity Association. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Henry Harrison podcast, Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance. Today we are lucky to have Jeremiah Conger on the phone, on the podcast, also on the phone, on Zoom, you name it, that works. And his company is Annuity Association. Welcome to the show, Jeremiah. Hello.
Hey there, Henry. Happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now, and maybe a good way to start with that is just your name is a pretty catchy, unusual name, and I know it has some significance of why you named it that separates you from some of the other folks that do what you do.
Yeah, so Annuity Association, the name is really to build awareness around the fact that we are a truly independent annuity advisory firm. And what I mean by that keyword independent is we don't just represent one or two companies or just a limited set of products. We have access to the entire independent annuity marketplace. And why that matters is the industry as a whole is pretty fragmented. In other words, the traditional model or methodology to build a business in this space would mean that you're maybe striking up relationships with one to two or three different carriers or annuity providers. And then those are the only products you become an expert in. And those are the ones that you position to your prospective clients. And that was one of the first kind of opportunities that I saw within this industry very early on in my career, was that was, in my opinion, an antiquated way of doing this business. And really wholeheartedly, it was the wrong way of doing this business. And I felt that way because in order to truly act as a fiduciary in the best interest of our prospective clients, I believed we needed to have access to every product. Otherwise, you're, kind of being biased towards the only products you may have access to or that limited product shelf. So from the get-go, we set out to strike up relationships with every major annuity provider in the US. And I think that's now over 80 different companies, hundreds and hundreds of products. And we use a unique software that aggregates everything in one place to allow us as advisors, but also for our prospective clients, to build confidence in the potential decisions they're making to invest in an annuity.
So for those that don't know, and I think pretty much anybody who's had an investment world at all has heard of annuity, but they really may not have a clear idea of what that means. I get it. There's lots of different companies providing them. And instead of hooking up to one or two, you're you're screening the whole marketplace and offering, trying to match the right annuity for the client. But what the heck's an annuity? I mean, I can tell you what I know what it is, but you probably can define it better than me.
Yeah, annuity is a pretty broad term or general term for the actual, generalization of a product that can generate income. But there's actually many different types of annuities that fall under that category. The two main types of annuities, or two main functions of an annuity, are really going to be centered around guaranteed income or protected growth. So really, if you break down the word annuity, it comes from a Latin origin. Annua is what the Roman militia was paid in terms of, for their services. They were paid in the form of an annua, which was a stream of payments. And so over time, annuities have evolved, and they've been around in our country for hundreds of years. Benjamin Franklin actually set up an annuity for the city of Boston, and it still pays out to this day because of the way he structured it. So annuities have evolved over time. Again, the primary purposes of them is either to secure a guaranteed income stream, particularly for retirement, or to protect your money, but still give yourself a fair rate of return with no or limited downside risk to the markets.
So would you call this an investment? It falls under the category of investments.
That's kind of a gray area. Some people out there will say an annuity is not an investment. It depends on the actual annuity type. So if we look at an income annuity, in my opinion, that's not an investment. That's more of a strategic tool that you're implementing into a holistic plan to play a significant role in how your income foundation is solidified for your retirement phase. So from that aspect, it's not a true investment. However, if you skip over to the other types of annuities that are designed for growth, an investment, in my opinion, is something you're putting money into that's going to achieve or earn interest over time. And those growth annuities can do just that while also protecting your downside risk. So, yes, an annuity can be an investment, but the primary purpose of an annuity is for guaranteed income. Those are not treated, or at least not recognized, in my opinion, as an investment, more so as a risk mitigation tool, a longevity risk mitigation tool, living a longer life, right? We have to secure income to live those years without, depleting our nest egg. So that's really the primary purpose. If you look at it from that perspective, it can actually be a growth optimization tool as well, because it takes the risk off of the rest of your assets that are outside of the annuity, affording yourself wherewithal and time in the market, which we know more time in the market means more reward. So I like to look at it as an optimization tool, a risk mitigation tool primarily.
And you are licensed or regulated. Explain a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, so to have the opportunity or the privilege, I always say, to offer these products and help put them into place for people that are approaching retirement or that maybe have recently retired, you definitely have to have the appropriate licensure. Annuities, particularly fixed annuities, which would cover those guaranteed lifetime income annuities, those protected growth annuities, those actually fall under life insurance or the category of life insurance. So, in order to be able to offer those, you have to obtain a life license or a life health and annuity license, depending on your state and what they call it. But it actually falls under the insurance category of wealth. So it's completely governed by the individual state. So it's at the state level, not the federal level.
Okay. And so, put simply, people have money, cash or stock or some way to get cash, and they buy some annuities, and those annuities provide them income, and it's a more typical type of thing that is done for people that are getting close to or have retired because they're trying to earn an income stream to replace the income they were making when they're working, and they've saved money all those years so they can live off that and other assets. That's that's the main thing. So you help people do that in the best way for them.
Absolutely. So I'm a retirement income specialist. My primary objective is to understand, our prospective clients, their goals, their objectives, but more importantly, I really try to navigate the conversation around the emotional side of the planning. What potentially will keep them up at night? What do they have concerns about? What are their near-term and long-term objectives for this money? What does it need to do for them to know that when they get to the end of this retirement journey, that they made a good decision? And there's many different ways to create retirement income plans. And depending on the risk tolerance of the individual, or even if the risk tolerance is generally high, we understand that the appropriate application of an income annuity can optimize in very critical areas around the psychological aspects of retirement and continued investing. When people are approaching retirement, it's a new phase that many people have, never even really thought of. They get there, they get within that 5 or 10 year window, and they start to think about it, but they still don't really understand how big of an equation it is to solve. Our culture in America, as a capitalistic society, it teaches us how to accumulate money. It teaches us how to go out and get a job, start a career, start contributing to a 401k or an IRA or general savings account. But nobody teaches us how to deaccumulate that money once we've saved it. And that's a bigger task and a much harder equation to solve because there's tons of risks that are associated with that deaccumulation phase. So think of like going up a mountain, right? You're hiking, you're going to the pinnacle. The what is it? The Himalayan mountains. What's the largest mountain in the world? I'm drawing a blank there, but let's think about we're trekking up this mountain, the largest mountain in the world, right? That's your accumulation phase of your career, maybe the first 30 or 40 years of your
I'm
working
talking about
career.
Mount Everest, but yeah.
Mount Everest, yeah, that's what I'm thinking
Yes.
of. Yeah, exactly. So think about trekking up Mount Everest, right? The working path is going up. That's when you're figuring out your career, building up your subject matter expertise, and accumulating your assets and saving and compounding those over time. When you get to retirement, that's that pinnacle. So now you have to figure out how to get back down. More than 80% of all accidents or deaths that happen on that trek of Mount Everest happen on the descension, happen on the way down. And so with retirement, it's a very neat analogy to use because there's a ton more risks involved with deaccumulation of your assets because we don't understand or have an idea really of how long we're going to live. No one knows what our expiration date is. But what we do know is that there could be a potential that we live a longer life than maybe anticipated. And there's studies that show that a married couple today, there's over a 50% chance that one of them will live to age 95 or beyond. That's a significant probability. And so when you think about living a longer life, longevity becomes a risk multiplier. The longer you live, the more exposure you have to the other retirement risks that we face. And those are things like volatility risk, taxation risk, healthcare inflation risk, general inflation risk, geopolitical risk, right? All of these risks become magnified when you live a longer life. And so when you put that into perspective, people that are approaching retirement, they may not think of it to that degree because obviously that's what I do and that's what I think about every day to help people. But what happens is they do have some remnants of thought along those lines and they become almost intimidated in a way of what do I do? How do I navigate this? One of the questions I ask my prospective clients is, when's the last time you've taken a withdrawal out of your 401k? And many of them say, well, I never have. And I say, well, now think about that. If you're just relying solely on your market accounts to support your income, that means taking withdrawals every month out of that market account, including when that market account's potentially down. Maybe we have unfavorable markets. Maybe we're in a very flat market. And now you're taking income or being forced in a way to take income because your lifestyle and expenses don't go away. If anything, when you retire, every day is like Saturday, so your expenses increase. You're going out to dinner more, you're doing the things you like with your family and whatnot. So when you think of it, all of this, and you package it up into the psychological aspects, it's a very daunting task to figure out. And like I said a moment ago, there's many different ways to generate retirement income plans. But when you look at utilizing tools, there's one tool that stands out amongst the rest in terms of sheer optimization. And when I say sheer optimization, I'm referring to annuities, obviously. And not because I'm just an annuity guy. I got into this because I learned all of these things leading up to, starting this business. And that's when I said, this is something that needs to be magnified for the general mass population of retirement, retirees and pre-retirees. So when you look at it from the optimization perspective, how does that occur? Well, annuities are contracts. You're purchasing a lifetime payment that's contractually guaranteed and bound by the issuing insurance company. We're talking about companies that have been around for over 200 years, some of the biggest financial names in the world. And they're backing up this income stream, which no 401k can do. no general financial advisor that doesn't offer annuities can do. No one's going to give you a contractually written contract and signed off saying they're going to guarantee that your income is going to last forever. But an insurance company that offers annuities can. So there's a lot of power, a lot of empowerment that goes into that when you can think about the benefits psychologically, not just economically. Economically is the later part of the decision. I start with the psychological benefits because when you can build that foundation of guaranteed income beneath you, you're now retiring to something that's solid, something that you know is going to be there and you can count on for the rest of your life and for the rest of your spouse's life if you're married. Think of it like building a house. What's the first thing that's laid? It's the foundation, right? And so in retirement, the foundation of your retirement fiscal house is the foundation of income. And the more guarantees that you can wrap into that foundation, and there's only three really recognized sources of guaranteed income in America today. That's pensions, if you're still blessed to have one, Social Security, which some would argue, hey, it's not guaranteed. There could be changes down the road. True, but it's still recognized by many economists as guaranteed income. And then the third is guaranteed income annuities. So if you can build that foundation and just cover your essentials, we're not saying put all your money into an annuity. That wouldn't be prudent. That wouldn't be in your best interest. You have to put as little as possible, but as much as necessary to make that foundation concrete and solid to stand the test of time. And, I'm in Florida, so we use the term hurricane proof. Houses to become hurricane proof, they have to have a solid foundation. That's no different than your retirement plan. So it also then allows you to have a different frame of mind, a different lens, if you will, on how you build the rest of your retirement fiscal house. When you have that foundation under you, it makes it so much clearer to build the rest of the blueprint because you know exactly what's underneath it and that it isn't going anywhere. So that's how I look at annuities in the proper way of applying them to a plan. And when you look at it from an optimization perspective, the peace of mind, the clarity, the confidence, and more importantly, the risk mitigation that occurs and the optimization of that is unparalleled. And then you combine that with the fact that now all your other assets that are in the markets, you can set it and forget it, just like the old Ronco infomercial with the rotisserie chicken. You set it and forget it. You don't have to think about what happens if the markets go down. We know through studies that the time that people get hurt the most in the markets is when they're trying to time the market getting in and getting out. And it's actually time in the market. The more time you're in, the more growth you can receive. So the annuity does that. It allows you to stay put. It allows you to be disciplined and not have that fear or preservation mentality over the remaining assets in the market because we know the markets always come back. It's just how much time does it take to get back to that even point and then exceed it. And when you're trying to time in and getting in and getting out, that's when bad things happen. There was a study, I think it was Dalbar, that looked at this and said, if you miss the 10 best days in the market each year, your returns are cut in half. If you were in the pure S&P 500, let's say it went up 10%, you missed those 10 best days, your return's now 5%. If you miss the best 20 days, your return's 2.5%. Think about that. So if you miss those 10 or 20 best days, your returns aren't even pacing inflation. The annuity allows you to stay put with peace of mind and confidence, knowing that, hey, now I have bounce back time. I can ride this wave, ride this roller coaster, let it get back up to even, and I'm golden. So then it optimizes your growth long term. So if you have legacy goals, you have bequest you want to leave, or you just want to build a bigger nest egg, it's proven, I've modeled it, that at the end of the road over a 30-year horizon, the modern retirement plan with an annuity serving your guaranteed income essentials will outpace a pure 60-40 or 50-50 equity bond portfolio, which is the traditional method. And it's proven. I've modeled it over every historical period in our economic history.
Really, I think the fear that you're talking about when people retire is, well, they're either working less or they're not working at all, and they have the savings and they don't want to run out. And obviously if they're selling when the stock market has just dropped by half and that's where all their money is, well, that's a bad time to be selling. So if they have this annuity income, then they can cover their expenses and they don't necessarily need to sell then. So that would be one of the goals in more layman's summary term. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. I always say to my clients or prospective clients, when you retire, what else retires with you? And sometimes they draw a blank or don't know where I'm going with that. Sometimes people get it right and they say, well, my income is retired. So you're hanging up the gloves, you're hanging up the boots, whatever it is, the stethoscope, maybe you're a nurse or something. My mom's a nurse, so that's why I use that. But you're hanging those things up. So your paycheck also retires. So many people go 40 years working in their career, getting a paycheck every 2 weeks or every month, and it becomes part of them. And as Americans, it's not about how much we've saved that is our sense of security. It's how much income we're getting consistently. That's our sense of security. So I always say retirement runs on income. Retirement runs on income, no different than the rest of your lifestyle. So when you retire that income stream, things start to get a little hairy, right? You're starting to worry about this, and then when the markets and all these other uncontrollable things start to do what they always do, there will always be the next crisis. There will always be the next president that you don't like in the office. There's always going to be the next war or conflict. All of those things impact the markets. You don't control them. So I always say if you don't tell your money what to do, it's going to tell you what to do. If the money's in the money's going to tell you what to do. You're not telling it at all. You have no say in that discussion. If you empower yourself though to change that dynamic and put the control on your side, at least on your bottom line income, that's what the annuity does, and it creates empowerment, and then it creates wherewithal. So you're right, hanging up the gloves, retiring your income, that's our security. How do we get that security back? And that's what annuities do, and they do it very well.
When you were growing up, your mom was a nurse. Did you ever think you'd be an entrepreneur or into annuities or some sort of investment or, guaranteed income like we've been talking about?
Maybe not
Yes.
initially when I was, very young. I was like most, I guess, elementary aged boys, if you will. I wanted to be a baseball player. So that was like a passion of mine. I loved baseball growing up and played it for a long time, my entire childhood. But as I began growing up and, learned the value of a dollar, my mother was very adamant about teaching me the value of money and how to save. And I always wanted to have money. I come from a lower, I don't even know if I'd say middle class. My mother was a single parent, so there was a lot of challenges. But growing up, I had influences with my uncles and my grandfather was an entrepreneur. So, I saw the successes they had. I started working at a very young age, started actually lugging around a push mower and a little 2.5 gallon gas tank. And I would knock on doors in my neighborhood and mow lawns for, I don't know, $5 a lawn or $10 a lawn, whatever it was. So I always had innate ability, but more so a craving for having money. I wanted to make my own money. And I never thought about owning my own business or starting some type of business until I was around 16, I think. I was working at Circuit City back in the day. And I was in the entertainment department, which was like the big screens and the plasma TVs when they started to come out, which were amazing, but they were super expensive. I mean, when I first started, the plasma TVs were like $15,000 or more. And I remember I had one of the biggest ticket sales of all time in that store. And this gentleman came in one night with his wife and family, and they were like, all right, pick out which one you want. And they picked out the Big Daddy plasma. That thing was at least 15,000. And then he picked out not only that, but the full surround sound and the full, all the top of the line cables and everything you could think about to go and make this living room the most incredible entertainment experience for his home. He got it. And the ticket was like over 34 grand. And when I was ringing him up, I asked the guy, I said, hey, sir, if you don't mind me asking, what do you do for a living? And he actually was in real estate. He was a real estate broker, but he specialized in like investing in his own like multifamily investment real estate properties. And from that moment on, that's when my mind really started to gearing up to I want to own my own business. I want to invest, in real estate or something along those lines. And ever since then, that's really the path that I've embarked upon. So over time, just building my acumen and different skill sets and areas that would help me be successful has led me here. So I'm very honored and privileged to have that opportunity.
And you've got a, good team. It's not just you, right? The company,
Absolutely.
you probably start out with just you, but you've grown it to a number of people. LinkedIn says, well, how many people roughly?
Yeah, we're pretty lean. We have, I think, 15 individuals total now between advisors, client success managers. We actually now just bolted on Medicare as another service within our company. So we have a Medicare specialist now. So yeah, we're around 15 people. We're remote, so we run lean, but it's definitely a privilege to have this company and really make an impact on lives in a multitude of ways, whether it be the general public or within our employee base as well.
And when you started this, how did that come about? You just said one day, okay, now's the time, make the leap, or something happened, or because
Well,
this is what, 7, 8 years ago now?
yeah, we I think incorporated in the end of 2018, I believe was the year. So 8 years now, going on almost nine. So I didn't start just out of the gate and said I wanted to be in financial services. It was more something that came later. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur from that moment that I mentioned about, meeting that gentleman in Circuit City. And at the time, I got recruited actually within Circuit City. Another guy came in one evening. His name was Keith Sedlowski was his name. I don't talk to him anymore, so if he's listening out there, hey Keith. But he came in one night and he had heard from another employee at Circuit City that had been, I guess, recruited, if you will, to Nextel was the name of the company that Keith represented. He was a store manager across the street. And I guess one of the guys they recruited from Circuit City, Keith asked him, like, hey, who's the top guy over there? Like, I want the best of the best. I want the guy that, just lights it up on the leaderboard every week. And they said my name. This guy, Eric, actually, Eric Bresser said my name. And so Keith came in one night to shop me, right? He's acting like he's gonna buy a TV. So I take him, through the whole thing. And my biggest passion's always been helping people. And it's never been about making a sale. It's been about really trying to understand what someone's trying to accomplish and then right fitting the solution. And so I took him down that path. What are you looking for? The whole nine, the qualifying aspect. And then long story short, we got to the end. We're about to ring things up. And he's like, hey man, let's cut the, you know what? I want you to come work for me. And so I was always open for new opportunities. I'm loyal, so I was like, "Hey, man, it's got to be better than what I what I'm doing here." They treat me pretty good. So he's like, "Well, just come talk to me Friday evening, and we'll figure it out." So, long story short, I got the job there. I did both because I didn't want to burn any bridges, and I didn't want to take a leap of faith and it not work out, and then have burned that bridge. So I actually worked full time I think I was 17 or 18. I just out of high school. So I worked 40 hours at each location. They were right across the street. So I'd start one shift here and immediately go over there. I fell in love with the wireless industry. It was just a very fun industry to be in. It was really when it was starting to experience a lot of innovation and growth around technology. So, I had the opportunity to sell the first smartphones, like literally the first smartphone, and that was really awesome. I did really well. I you know, excelled there. After about a year or two into that, I transferred to go to college in Tallahassee. And I transferred my location. Obviously, I kept my job, transferred my location to Tallahassee, and that store was what they called a top 100 store. It was like, volume wise, it was like one of the busiest in the country. And I just excelled, did what I always did, and helped people get what they want. And I got promoted very young to management. And then I got recruited again within Sprint and Nextel to join their prepaid side of the brand. to launch a new territory. So I became a territory manager. And that's where I really got into where I saw some opportunity to become a business owner, an entrepreneur. And that role as a territory manager for Boost Mobile, which was the prepaid brand back then, which was one of the fastest growing wireless brands in the country at the time. My job was to go and find retail stores that would sell those products or distribute those products. So these were things like mom and pop stores, people that were already selling something in the same line. So I'd go into like malls and the kiosks that sell cell phone cases, say, hey, you want to sell Boost mobile phones, and, sign people up like that. And over time, I built a very vast network of independent retailers. And my territory was one of the top in the country. I won all these MVP awards and things. And at that point, I had struck up a relationship which with a gentleman that ended up becoming the largest independent retailer for Sprint's prepaid brands. And he was a younger guy. He was maybe 15 years older than me, but for that line of work, he was pretty young at the time. I was only 20, so he must have been in his mid 30s. And this guy was like, just had a mind that I've never kind of experienced. I have experienced it now. I would like to say I have a similar mind now because of this experience I had with him, but he just thought differently. And he was massive in thinking around marketing. Like that's where he won. Like it wasn't just putting a sign on the exterior of the store and praying that someone comes in because they saw the sign. This guy owned his market, and he was on radio, TV, flyers, mailers, sign spinners, like you name it. This guy did it to the nth degree. And he ended up becoming the largest and fastest growing retailer in that space, which, I was recognized for, but all the effort and really the hard work went to him. I can't take credit for that. But long story short, I learned how he did things. I learned how he did and operated his business, marketing and operations, training of his staff and who he hired, what those personalities were like, the experience the stores had. Like when you walked into them, they felt completely different than any other Boost Mobile store at the time. And as a matter of fact, his stores were what Sprint and Nextel at the time, it's like what they emulated or imitated or duplicated or replicated, whatever word you want to use there. They saw his stores and are like, holy crap, like if we make this a requirement for our retailers, maybe our sales change. And they ended up implementing that. So the requirements to become a retailer meant you had to put in a good amount of money to the build out. Whereas before, when we were just getting the brand off the ground, there was no requirements. As long as you had a business address and an EIN, you could sell the cell phones, right? So I learned all of this, and then by the time I was 23, I was still in that job, that role, which was expanding the market and opening up new doors, is what they called it, stores, but they called it doors for whatever reason. And I found a territory. I was planning on moving to Southeast Florida, and there was a territory that was wide open. And that's when I said, maybe it's time. Maybe I'm going to hang my gloves up and being a corporate employee. I had enough money saved to where I know this business. I'm helping people succeed in it every day. So that's what I did. I took the leap of faith. I opened up my first store, retired my paycheck right from that job, became completely reliant on this one store. The one store quickly grew. I owned the market and ended up becoming the fastest growing retailer in that area. I then actually opened up, it ended up being 12 stores in total. Right at the end of that, we sold and then opened up another dozen stores with T-Mobile. So we actually got promoted in a way in that world as an independent retailer to the brand that was exploding, which was T-Mobile. And we ended up with 12 stores, and we ended up selling those at some point. And then that's when I got into this. And that's really when I learned the ability to market, the ability to create a sound operation, and to create a client experience that is unmatched. I learned all those things, and I always had a knack for finance. And like I said, my mother taught me the value of a dollar. So I've always been good with saving money, investing money, helping friends and family do that for them, and help them build their acumen in that area. And so I always had a passion for finance, and that's what led me here. Is when I sold those stores and I was looking for the next thing, I found this, and I got kind of recruited in a way. There was headhunters that were reaching out to me. I had a resume out on, I don't know, LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter or whatever it was, Indeed, I think it was. They reached out, and I spoke to some people. And initially, you hear insurance and life insurance, wealth planning, and financial planning. Not everybody wakes up saying they want to sell or offer life insurance, right? That's kind of a hard gig to really figure out. But after a while, I met this really brilliant individual who was the guy that wanted me to join his team. And I took a leap of faith and tried it out. And that's kind of what spawned Annuity Association, is within a short period of time, learning that business and seeing the opportunities that existed because of the fragmentation and the antiquated methodology of this business. I knew there was a better way, and that's what spawned the thought of annuityassociation.com. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but that's
Oh, it's a nice
how we
story. It's a
arrived.
nice story. And so you had 12 or 24 stores. You went
Well,
from
we
one
had
to,
an initial 12 that we sold, and then we reinvested in another 12.
and then you sold those.
Yes.
Yeah, so you had two liquidating events, and you probably also were of a mindset, at a young age, you had some capital accumulated and you didn't have a paycheck. And then the thought of, I don't know if you bought annuities right then, but the thought of where am I going to get my income becomes a little more real because, yeah, you have some money, but if you're just spending it every day, I mean,
That's true. No, that would, I would say, would be one of the harder parts of this journey so far, was that I was in that phase where I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go. I didn't know if I wanted to, start a business, or I knew I wanted to start another business. I just didn't know what industry. And so I was looking at so many different things. I was looking at more wireless opportunities. I remember at one point I was looking at franchises. I can't remember which ones, but franchises in my local market. And I had my resume out there as getting hit up with different financial service opportunities. But over time, yeah, the money started to dwindle. The money that we scored on the sale, I started to feel the crunch. I'm not going to lie about it. And I won't say I acted out of desperation. That's never the right way. But I did feel like, hey, man, I might just have to do something to get some cash flow coming in. And even if that meant going back to work as a W-2 employee, I was willing to do that. So, but luckily, like I said, I had a great interview with a gentleman, and that was a smaller insurance marketing organization at the time. And their whole claim to fame was offering mortgage protection insurance, which helps people like younger families secure their mortgage debt in the event of an untimely or sudden death of the primary breadwinner. And so it was something that I believed in, and that's really what got me there. Was I had to believe in what I was offering. I had to believe in it truly helping people. And there was actually something that struck close to home. Was my grandmother had lost her husband, my grandfather, in 1990. I was only 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old at the time. But my grandfather was the breadwinner. My grandmother was fortunate to be a stay-at-home mom, and she had 8 children. My dad being one of them.
uh,
And he died. He was avid fisherman and scuba diver, and he was scuba diving at this time in the Gulf of Mexico at about 120 feet. And he had a heart attack, a massive heart attack while underwater. And so he was, coast guarded out to the hospital. He died on the way. And my grandmother was left in a very tough spot because he didn't have life insurance and he didn't have this mortgage protection insurance. And I thought about it and I was like, man, if he would have had this, my grandmother wouldn't have went through the financial ruin that she ended up going through. She lost her home. He had a business. He was an entrepreneur. He actually owned the largest garage door business at the time in the greater Tampa area. And she lost her home. She went into this like depressive state. So she didn't care about anything. Money, she was so depressed, like she didn't care about anything. And ended up losing the home because she defaulted. I think it was also something to do with taxes, but long story short, she lost the home. He built that. My grandfather built that home from the foundation up. And she lost all of his assets. He had a garage door business. that just went bankrupt. Couldn't sell it because there was no planning or succession planning done that was proper. And she ended up, he had a bunch of commercial buildings, lost those. So, long story short, she became financially destitute because of this event. Now, luckily, my uncles and my dad and things were able to help her out. They were making money and things to help her for the rest of her life, but not everybody has that beneath, to fall back on, nor do many people want to lose dignity in relying on other people. So I believed in the product of mortgage protection. That's what got me to go ahead and give it the green light. And then I started in learning financial services and what other areas of financial planning there was because I found a need for this. I'm like, what else is out there? How else can I serve people? And that's when I found retirement planning and the fact that many people go into retirement without a plan. I want to say it's over 40% of people retire with no formal plan. And that's a massive need. It's almost in a way a crisis because they're really setting themselves up for a bad day if they don't have a plan to mitigate it. And that's how I ended up here. So that company offered very few annuity products. When I started to learn about retirement income planning, I got passionate about it. And I went to Brad, the guy that recruited me, and I said, "Hey man, I've got this client that's a primary candidate for an income annuity. They just retired. They're trying to figure things out. Which product should I, you know, show them? What are products?" And he goes, "I don't know, man. Just pick one of them and learn about it. Read the brochure and just go tell them the story about the brochure. Just read the brochure." That's what he said. And to me, I was like, that is so wrong, man. Like I can't go do that. I can't get behind that if I don't believe in it myself. And so then I reached out to the corporate person in that company. I was like, "Hey, I want to know all the products. How many do we have?" And the number was 15. 15 products, some for income, some for growth. And then I said, "Well, from my research just on Google, there's like 500 different products out there. How do we only have 15?" And he goes, "I don't know, man. That's just the way it is. It's just the way this business is ran. You get a couple carriers that you build relationships with, and then you sell their products. And the more you sell, the more commissions you make and all of that." And I said, "This is wrong, man. Like, this is so wrong." I'm sitting in my bed one night, Henry, and I'm thinking about this, and I had that light bulb moment. I'm like, that's it. I'm gonna take this problem that I found and this opportunity to solve it, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna just take the leap of faith and do it. And I was on GoDaddy that night, and I was typing in URL names, like thinking of the business name, and I was typing everything, annuity this, annuity that, blah blah blah, annuity, whatever, trying to figure it out. Everything was taken or it was for sale for a big asking price. And then I typed in annuityassociation.com and it said it was available for like $14. And then I'm like, did I spell this wrong? Like, did I spell annuity wrong? Did I spell association wrong? And long story short, it wasn't spelled wrong, thankfully. And I bought it, secured it, and hit the ground running from that point on with the mission that we will be educational first in nature, transparency first in nature, and trust first. There's no first, second, third. It's all three of those together are the first priority. And so we've struck up relationships with every major annuity provider in the country. We leverage technology to filter all the information in. We offer a very interactive process to help people make more confident decisions and know they're not buying the wrong annuity or they're not being sold something that isn't the best value. They get to see it with their own eyes, no different than when you go to a restaurant and you want the best steak. You go to a steakhouse and it's ranking these steaks based on the profile. That's the way we treat this. So we make it go from being sold something to empowering you to buy something with confidence.
Just to tie up one end that you mentioned, life insurance. So there are annuities that pay income and also provide life insurance. So without going down that path, just to sort of, like you said, there's a vast number of choices, and that you can help empower people to and guide them with based on their goals of what would be the best choice. But certainly life insurance is one part. I don't know if it's literally annuities. I'm getting over my head there with the language, the lingo, but
Well, think of it
certainly
like
that.
life insurance is really going to be more designed to replace the income, the future income that you never earned. So it's generally positioned more for a younger professional that's maybe just starting out and building their family, building their home and their nest egg. And the real design of life insurance is to replace future income that would have been earned if the person didn't die early. So it's ideal for like you have a 5-year-old daughter or son and you pass away at 40 years old or 35. Now that child would maybe be more challenged to be able to afford college. But if you had a life insurance policy to fill that void, that's what it would be designed for. There's many applications of life insurance, but I tend to think that it's for a younger phase of life to replace future income. And annuity is the opposite. It's like the opposite of that. It's to replace income that you're retiring for for your current needs, right? So for now, so you don't run out of money. So that would be the kind of relationships to those.
I
Am
was
I?
thinking they also sell life insurance to help families with life insurance. But isn't there also what are the types of products where people have an estate that they're going to pass down, that there's annuities and then there's
Cash
retained
value
life
life insurance.
cash value insurance? Yeah.
Yeah, cash value life insurance. So like I said, there's many applications of life insurance and how it can fit into an overall plan. Cash value life insurance or life insurance in general, the death benefit generally is recognized as a tax-free death benefit. So those vehicles can sometimes be leveraged to offset estate taxes, can be part of an estate plan. It can also be used to shield assets from creditors and things. So there's a lot of different applications, but the one that's primarily used for estate planning, that is a whole life or an indexed universal life structured policy that builds cash value. That cash value can be used for income in a way that's also recognized as tax-free income. But generally, there's also death benefit provisions that are recognized as tax-free as well. So it just depends on the true need. There's many ways to leverage that product.
Sure. I just wanted you to touch on that since I knew that was a part of your expertise in offerings. Well, I know you've won some, maybe to wrap up, you have some things that might be worth sharing that you achievements that you've had and then we can call it a day.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to share our story. I guess some of the accolades, yeah, I'm not real big on bragging or anything.
I'm
It's just
pulling it out. I'm pulling it out of you. Yeah.
it's just more of a byproduct of doing the right thing, and that's serving and helping people get what they need or what they want. We were recognized by Inc. 5000 last year as one of the fastest growing private companies in America. We ranked 294th on that list. So, a kid from the Tampa area, growing up, I never fathomed that that would be a list that I'm a part of. I think it's pretty prestigious, at least where I come from. And so it's nice to be recognized for that. But it's again, it's a byproduct of doing the right thing and helping people and really solving problems. That's what all of these accolades come from, and including money. The more bigger problems you can solve for people, that money is just a byproduct, and these accolades are the same. We also, for one of the partnerships that we have within the annuity distribution industry, that channel is called an IMO channel, Insurance Marketing Organization. We actually just qualified for their Hall of Fame recognition. We've only been in business with that IMO for just over 5 years. And to meet that qualification, you have to have done over 100 million in annuity production to achieve that. And we were one of the fastest to achieve it. So we did it within 5 years. So we're pretty proud of that. And then last but not least, I think the most important thing here, and I appreciate everybody's time and hearing my story and everything, to continue building upon our mission, which is to help people make clearer retirement decisions. And ultimately, if an annuity is one of those products that fit into that picture, we are passionate about helping people make better annuity buying decisions. And that we do that through trust and education and ultimately empowering you to know what you're getting for your hard-earned money. We have a framework that we teach you to evaluate these products. But what we've done now is we've just launched our direct-to-consumer annuity buying platform. We understand that there's people out there that are very intelligent, they're very self-aware of what they want, what they need. I call them DIY investors. They're people that don't need a financial planner. They don't need an investment professional. All they need is the access to the solution. And so we built a platform that we call nesteasyannuities.com, nesteasyannuities.com, and it's a direct-to-consumer buying platform that gives you access to all of the annuity products in one place. So again, we get away from that fragmented, antiquated methodology, give you everything to look at, compare rates, companies, financial stability ratings of the insurer, the whole nine. Give yourself the ability to quote on your terms and empower you ultimately to build your annuity IQ to then therefore hopefully empower you to buy when you're ready on your terms. So there's no sales pitch. There's no, smoke and mirrors stuff going on. It's just, I like what I see. You click a button and you buy it direct. And it's one of the first of its kind. We're really innovating and disrupting our space for the betterment of consumers.
Wow, that's terrific. Yeah, we'll get to a whole new show on that. But I think for today we'll celebrate a good time together, and really great to get to know you better, and look forward to staying in touch, and thank you for coming on.
Pleasure's been mine. I appreciate the time, Henry, and looking forward to possibly being on again soon.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another episode. You can also search Henry Harrison Podcast on your favorite podcast platforms.